cases. All right, so let's just jump into Flutter and GraphQL. So I assume everyone here already knows what Flutter is, but if you're here and don't know what it is, then Flutter is Google's UI toolkit for building beautiful natively compiled applications for mobile, web, and desktop from a single code base. So it's cross-platform basically. And then you have many different others like Xamarin, React Native, etc. And GraphQL now is a query language for APIs and a runtime for fulfilling those queries with your existing data. So GraphQL is an alternative to RESTful API, which most of us been using for a good while now. So with GraphQL, think of it like your like if you've done database before, think of it as SQL. So in SQL you can write SQL statements to get the exact data that you want. GraphQL has a similar functionality to that, right? So right, we'll just jump right into the demo now. But before we do that, I'll just go to a few websites that we need to look at for some prerequisites. So the first website, pub.dev, that's where we'll find our
Hey,
GraphQL.
sorry about to interrupt. Are you able to share your screen?
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I thought I was sharing. Thank you
Okay,
so much
okay.
for my.
All right.
Oh, yeah, thank you so much. You see my screen now?
Yeah, we can see it.
Great. Right. So I was at using GraphQL in Flutter. So if we jump to pub.dev package GraphQL Flutter, this is a Flutter package that was written, the GraphQL package that was written so we can integrate it in our Flutter app. So let's just backtrack for a little bit. How I got started using GraphQL actually was last year. I applied for an internship out in Kingston, and the requirement was to use GraphQL. None of us knew GraphQL, but we still applied and we got it. And it was a bit of a learning curve at first because we had no idea. We just heard about it, and also the documentation on it was good, but it was limited in the sense that in terms of architectural design. So we wanted to use it to do for certain things, and we just had to figure our way out and by trial and error. So I'm going to show you how you can set up GraphQL in your Flutter app. So what you want to do first is come here and grab the the dependency GraphQL underscore Flutter, and we'll open our Flutter app now, and you'll go ahead and paste that in your pub/spec that YAML. Um, Currently, let me show you what this looks like. The code we have here is displaying this. So what we'll be doing is creating a Rick and Morty app that shows all the different information about Rick and Morty TV series. So currently, this is what's built to the emulator. Anybody here watch Rick and Morty, by the way? Yes, no, maybe so.
For now, not.
Okay. All right. So currently, this here gives us this UI here. So after we paste the dependence in our package, then we'll now run pubget, which I already done. And also what you'll need to do as well is to copy and paste the import statement in any file that will be using GraphQL. So now that we have that set up, which is the first prerequisite, what you'll need to do is to go ahead and create a GraphQL client. So we'll call this GraphQL client.dart. And for the interest of time, I went and I already coded a lot of these prerequisites. So I just copy it and explain it. So here we imported our GraphQL Flutter statement, and we just created a GraphQL configuration class that will store our HTTP link and the URL. So I'll show you now where this URL comes from. So if we visit rickandmorty.com/GraphQL, then you'll see a list where then you'll see the GraphQL playground. So this here is GraphQL syntax. So this is how we call this a query in GraphQL. Now a query allows us to retrieve information. So it's similar to in REST where you have an endpoint and an endpoint which will give you back the data that you are requesting. So in GraphQL now what you have is a query that queries the data schema and return what you want. So this represent, let me just drop this over here. Oops. Right. So, right. So this characters, this here, it gives you a list of characters. What we can do is we can look at the docs and we can see the different schema here and how to retrieve the data. So if we click on character here, then you'll see that then you'll see the different attributes that you can get from character. You can get name, status, species, etc. Um, so let's just press play here. And what you'll see is that you get the character, then you get a list of the results, name, Rick Sanchez, status, image, etc. Now, what we could do is we could add species. And if we press play, then it will show species as well. So the thing I like about GraphQL a lot is typically when you're using REST API, and if you want to get certain data, you have to ask the developer, the backend developer, to create a next endpoint so you can accomplish this. All you need to do in GraphQL is to look at the data schema and just you can plug in any information you want or take out any information you don't want and use it just like that. So it's very, very flexible, especially when you have a large amount of data coming in from the internet. All right, so what we'll be doing now is we'll be parsing this data within our app. So we have already went to set up our GraphQL client. This here is just GraphQL syntax, which can be found on the GraphQL package website, and also now we'll go to create our queries. So I'll just copy this right here. We call this queries.dart. All right, so now to explain this, what I'm highlighting now, this is the query, which this is basically the query right here. And how I decided to use it was to create, was to put my queries in functions so I can get access to them to pass parameters to the functions and into the query. So this here will be useful for getting our data. And this is just the syntax, these three triple quotes to surround your query in. All right, so I'll save that. And then now we've had our main prerequisite set up. We'll come back to our home page Dart to make use of the API now. So let me just copy all this. All right. I'll paste it and explain it. All right, so what's going on here now? On line 12, we are creating an instance of our GraphQL configuration, which we created in GraphQL Client. So this class here, we're just getting an instance of it so we can use it. This here, we're just creating an instance of our queries which we created, our queries class right here. And here we're just creating a list to save our data. And of course, we know we could also go ahead and create data models to store data in, but for this simple example, we'll just be using a list. Now, this is the function that will be responsible for getting our details. We call it fetch profile. It also needs to be an async function because the client, the GraphQL client requests await. So what we also did now, this line here is to call our GraphQL client. So what happened is we can create multiple different clients in this class here. For example, if we were doing something like authentication as well, we could have created an authentication client and we'll be able to call that client by just saying underscore GraphQL configuration dot auth client. So similarly, we just did that my GQL client. This here query result. This is when a query result in GraphQL is when you are receiving data. So a get request basically, and a post request, equivalent of a post request in GraphQL would be something called a mutation. So basically the result that we get back will be stored in this with this variable result, similar to how we normally store things in a response body in REST. So what happened now is we get this function here, and which allows us to pass in our parameters, and our parameters now will be the query that we had created. So let's say so our query will be fetch all profile. Query I'm speaking of is the query we have created over here. So we pass in this query to the query function. So we just say underscore query dot fetch all profile. Now what happened is the GraphQL client now will put all of this together and make a request to the endpoint and query the data schema using this query that we sent in as our parameter. And now what we're just doing here is we're just simply saying that if there's an exception, we want to print it, and if not, just print the data, and we'll store this data in our profile list so we can use it later on. So I'll just go ahead and um, do a hot reload so we can see the data, see if our data has been parsed. um, while this is running, if there's any question, I guess we could take question after, or if there's anything you want me to explain or go back to, you can always stop me and let me know if you're not understanding. So what I wanted to show you was our data that's now being retrieved from the endpoint. So this is it right here. So it gives us a character object, then a result, and a list of results with all the different Rick and Morty characters. And this is the data that we'll be displaying in our app. So now we have all this data stored in our profile list. We'll go ahead and what we want to do is iterate over this data. So we'll change. So if you recall, this is the current state of our app same way. Nothing but dummy data. So what I want to do is to iterate over the list. So we'll, as our profile, as our item count, we'll have profile list dot length, and then what I want to do is want to replace this dummy text, this dummy link with profile list index, and I believe it was called image. Image. So what I'm doing here actually is I'm just getting, I'm looking at the key of each of these key value pairs, and I'm just putting it in so I can retrieve the value for it. So I think this should go like so. Yeah. So we'll just do this for everything else here. So just copy right here. And now we'll put in the name right here. Index name status here. This think it's called status and origin. Origin, great. And let's now do a hard restart. Well, before that, actually, want to just create a little progress dialog that will spin and load when our data is ready. So what we're just going to do is we're just going to check if the profile, if the list is empty, and if it's empty, then we know that there is no data in it as yet, and we'll keep this circular progress spinning until it's no longer empty. It will display our information. So let's just do a hot restart now, and let's see if it works. Oops, is not type string, not a subtype of type string. All right, let's see where this error is coming from. Let's see what happened. Origin. All right, so let me just comment this out for a second. Comment this out. And comment this out as well. All right, let me see if the image loads. All right, sorry about that. So just have to do a little debugging here.
Sorry. Sorry for the interruption. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you. All right, so I'm hearing you.
Yeah, so if you kindly go back to the GraphQL IDE.
Could you repeat, please?
Sorry, I'm saying if you could kindly go back to the GraphQL IDE. I think I know where the problem is.
GraphQL ID.
The schema.
You mean
The schema in the browser.
Oh, in the browser. Oh, my bad.
So the origin is the issue. Line 9 and 10. From the schema, you can see you're indexing into the name, but in the code, you're indexing into the origin alone. So you have to access the name from the code.
Yes, thank you very much for reminding me about that. You're so right. You are. That is very correct. All right. So, sorry, could I have your name just for reference, please?
My name is Abud.
What was that again?
Abud.
Abud. All right, Abud. So Abud just
No,
saw the mistake I made, and it's right in origin. So what I failed to do was I also needed to index the origin name, because if we go here, this origin here represents another object, and we need to get the name from it. So this is what I should have done. And now if we restart, there we go. Thanks very much, Abid. So now we can see the images parse, the name, the status, origin, and the species. So what we want to, what something we can do really quickly is, if we just want the species real quick, we could just go ahead and update this by adding, let me just check if it's species or species. We could just go ahead and add species here to our queries.dart and quickly come here and do profile list index species, and this is supposed to work. And there we have it: human, alien, etc. And this was a very quick and easy setup of how to use GraphQL. Now, what I like about this setup is initially when I started GraphQL, most tutorials or documentations I had read, it will typically wrap our build class, well, wrap the scaffold inside of in a GraphQL widget. And I didn't like that for certain reasons, particularly because in that way, the GraphQL query would only be run when the page was built. So I could not get it to run, like if I had for example, the use case I had was, I had a login form and I wanted it to run when I pressed the button, not when the page was built. So what we had to do was we had to understood this in great detail, so we could abstract all of these and do the wrapping our class or widget in our GraphQL widget, so we could able to handle these things manually the way that we wanted it to be done. But yes, this is basically the simple setup for GraphQL in a nutshell. Thank you very much again, Abud, for helping me out there. If there's any question or comments, you guys are free to ask me questions now.
A quick question. Is this project on GitHub where we could take a look at it?
Yeah, sure. I uploaded it to my GitHub. I had done this project initially for another presentation. So it's already there. I'll just copy the link and paste it in the chat. So this project is there also. You can reach out to me. Can reach out to me on Twitter, Instagram, and I'll answer any questions you have as well if you're going through this and have any issue. This is my Twitter.
All right.
All right. So,
Thank you for the wonderful presentation. Maybe you can mute.
no problem. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so thank you for the wonderful presentation. It was a great one. I have one question. So at what circumstance should one use GraphQL? Are there circumstances that one should use it, and is it advisable at other circumstances not to use it? Like, why should one use GraphQL?
All right, great question. So if you're already using a REST API in your app and you're fine with that, then sure you should. Under what circumstance will I recommend to use it? If you realize that that the data you're retrieving is continually is really large. So like for example, Twitter has to retrieve a lot of data, and Facebook as well. So I think that's why Facebook even come up with using GraphQL, and Twitter has adopted GraphQL to some extent as well. So if you're just doing a small project and you're quite fine with REST, you should. But once you realize that that project is going to get big, then I would say you can use GraphQL, because GraphQL is really great with scaling. Because what will happen is that you'll end up with a lot of endpoints being thrown around the place, and it'll be from time to time, you'll not retrieving data that you probably not even wanted with REST API. But GraphQL, you can retrieve the exact thing that you want, and it prevents a lot of like wastage in terms of um, internet speed, a lot of different CPU, hardware, phone performance, and things like that. So that would be my use case for when to use it.
All right, thank you. That's great to note. Anyone with any other question, please proceed.
Yes, I have one.
Mm-hmm.
I would want to ask you if is any hosting provider so you can do your own GraphQL hosting somewhere on some servers, like not only to get the data from an API. Like, what solution would you recommend for hosting your own data somewhere? You are on mute. Wait, you are on mute.
Yes, I was on mute. Sorry about that.
All right.
So last year when I was working at the company that I learned to do the GraphQL, what the team had done was to host it on Heroku. So I think we used Heroku servers to host our data, and the backend stack was MongoDB and Node. So Node also has GraphQL where you can set up the endpoint, the API in GraphQL, and they hosted it on Heroku. But I have to be honest, I haven't done backend work as it relates to GraphQL, so I haven't set up my own backend for GraphQL before. I only used it from the backend developers. So that's one thing I want to do this year.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I hope I answered your question.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Alex, for the question. There's one question. I don't know if it's a comment or a question from the chat from Robert. He's saying a +1 for the GraphQL for larger data models and smaller data selections. For display, it lets you be selective about the data you get. Maybe Robert, would you add some comment on that?
Sure.
All right.
When you have very small data models, using REST works very nicely. When you have a huge data model, and you don't need all of it, because look, we've got mobile screens and you just need a little bit, like populating a list. You don't need all the data from all the objects. You need a little bit of data from a fair number of objects, possibly all. But you want to restrict the amount of data that's coming back. Now, the downside of GraphQL from how we used it at TripAdvisor is that you have larger requests. You know, REST makes a very terse request. And the other thing, GraphQL makes a much larger request because you have to ask for everything you want. The other thing which makes debugging a little bit harder for GraphQL than REST is you're always calling the same API endpoint. Everything you do calls one API endpoint. So if you're looking at a proxy server, you can't tell which GraphQL call is the one you want to look at from the call. You did a bunch of calls, you got a bunch of data. Which one was the one for the particular data that you know is in error? You've got to look through every single one until you find it. And you can't tell the difference between which ones are the ones which change data and which ones are the ones which get data. Again, it's the same API endpoint. This is not insurmountable, and the advantages are clear when you're dealing with really large data sets, but REST still has some advantages, one of which is you know what every single URL is doing. You've got different endpoints for different operations. So it makes debugging a little easier. It's just a trade-off, it's a balancing act. But it has real advantages, that's good to know. I did have one question, Deandrew. Did you explore any of the other GraphQL packages for Flutter?
Hey Robert, no, I only imported one of the Flutter packages.
Yeah, no, it looks reasonably clean from what you've shown us. I was just wondering because it's not the only one out there.
Oh, right, yeah. There are several others, but I think I found myself comfortable using this one. But to the best of my knowledge, there is an underlying one which this was built off, which I also found on GitHub, and sometimes I piggybacked on that one to understood what this one was saying.
Cool. No, it's a really useful technique. Thanks for bringing it to us.
Robert, thank you very much for also sharing that some of those things, because they're really, really true. Advantages to GraphQL. It also has its fans, which also are supposed to be aware of. Totally agree.
Nice. That's great to hear from both Robert and Deandrew. I hope I pronounced it correctly this time. All right. Do we have any other question from any other person about the topic or anything? If there is no at the moment, then I'll ask Abud a question. So Abud, have you done like any integration with the GraphQL and Flutter before? And maybe if you can share your little sense or your input about it.
Yeah, so I have used GraphQL before. And I think most of what has been said here is true. The only thing I'd like to add, I don't know if it's been said, but it's a very good point. GraphQL enables you to get exactly what you want. So if you want, for example, to, out of the large data set, you want to get maybe the name of a user or something, it's very quick and effective. So there's a point that was written about not knowing what to fetch and which particular URLs you use to get unmuted data. So when you're using GraphQL, there's this notion of queries and mutations. So from my knowledge, I think queries are used to get data and mutations are used to perform changes in the backend, for example. So for simple debugging, I think the best tool that's out there for GraphQL is the IDE that Deandrew used. So yeah, to answer your question, I think I've used GraphQL for the past 8 months or so, and I think it's very, very helpful, especially when you're dealing with protected data in terms of authentications and some other stuff. So the IDE provides some way in which you can provide a query and provide the variables you want to get from the data. So that's another improvement to that. That's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that, Abud.
Also,
Back to you, Deandrew.
add a tool I use is something called Altier. So it's basically a post for GraphQL. So you can simply just set up the extension. So when I was working on my backend, tells me that hey, this mutation is really artificial. Just go on the data schema, and then I could create the query in GraphQL in Altier rather, and test it right here to see if everything is coming back properly, and then I just copy the query and paste it in Flutter and begin using it from there. So Altier is a good environment you can use. It's equivalent to Postman that we use for RESTful API.
All right, that's great to know about it. Maybe you
Um,
can also paste the link on the chat for other people to get it.
Sorry, one thing I forgot.
Mm-hmm.
The GraphQL IDE, for example, provides auto-completion. So, Deandrew, if you could kindly go back to the IDE on the screen you're sharing. On the browser GraphQL.
Oh, sorry about that.
So the playground you are opening. Okay. I think I can share my screen.
Let me just stop sharing then.
Sorry, you can see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. So what I was saying is the beauty of this, especially the IDE, it's called an IDE for GraphQL. You can take a look at the schema and any documentation that has been provided. So for example, if you're getting, for example, a character and you don't know the data type, they are always provided here. And there's also a schema where you can browse the particular details of that particular data set you want to get. Then the last thing I forgot to mention is that for any authenticated GraphQL endpoints, the IDE provides a way in which you can provide your authentication over here. And if you have, for example, you are running a mutation and you want to pass in some variables, you can pass them over here. So now the last thing I forgot to mention is that you can, the IDE provides auto completion. So you don't need to know most of the stuff when you're the stuff you're getting if you are not able to get them. I don't know if that makes sense. So you can press Control and space, and it can give you a list of the options to get. So for example, this is what I used when I was debugging the issue that came up during the demo. When I, for example, got the name, you can see it provides autocorrection. You can see that you're supposed to get a few more fields from this particular object. So that's using now the auto completion, you can get whatever you want. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abud, for your contribution too. It's very helpful. Deandrew, take it over. Any other question? Do we have like any other input?
So sorry for interruption. One last comment. I won't make any more.
Mm-hmm.
Deandrew, I don't know if you would like feedback on the code.
Could you go again, please?
I was asking if you would like any feedback from the code you shared with us.
Oh yes, definitely. If you've seen any ways where this could be optimized or could be differently, you could go ahead.
Okay, so I've seen, I don't know if it's so a small bug when you're doing it in future will be, I saw you were checking if the results is an empty list, and then you're showing a circular progress indicator, right?
Could you
Yes,
share your
yes.
screen so that we can see what Abud is asking?
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, sure. So he was talking about this line right here.
Yeah, line 46. So a potential bug here will be, for example, the API returns an empty list. So your app will still be loading for a long time and it won't stop. So a suggestion would be to use something like a stream builder, and then you tweak your function up here so that it can pass in your data into the controller. That's it. Thank you for your time.
Something like that.
So there's a widget we call a stream builder, which easily
Oh,
listens to
okay.
anything in your application. I think you know it. So that's an
Yes, stream
easy way
builder.
in which you can put your inputs into the UI.
I see. Thanks a lot. I'll check it out later.
All right. Thank you all for your inputs and questions. They were so insightful, and also thank you, Deandrew, for the presentation. So at least some of us who haven't gotten started with GraphQL, we can have a starting point on where to start from and where to look for answers in case we have any problems along the way. So for the audience, thank you all for joining today's meetup. I'm so grateful for your presence. Do we have any person with any comments or any additional statement before we close it? We are supposed to close in 10 minutes time. Candy.
Oh, hi, Maureen.
Hi.
Thank you so much for the nice session. I was asking, since this is actually my very first time interacting with GraphQL, I wanted to ask if you're interacting with it with the IDE, how do you you have to have imported the GraphQL package on your Flutter project. And also there's something they mentioned about Postman. Does it work like Postman or something? Yeah, that was it.
All right. I think your name was Katie. That's what Maureen said.
Her name is Candy.
Okay. All right. So what you do to set up is you just go to the Flutter package that you want to use. So I'm using this GraphQL package, and I just go to install. After I go to install, I copy the dependency and paste it over here in my YAML as I would do for any third-party library. And then after you've done that now, you go ahead and copy the import statement and paste it into any class that will be using GraphQL. Also about Postman, I don't know if you can use if GraphQL is used in Postman. I don't know if Postman has that feature, but someone could probably tell me if it does or not. But what I was saying is I use Altair as my playground, and I was saying that it functions pretty similar to Postman as to when you're doing the REST API in Postman. So I usually check my GraphQL mutations and queries using Altair. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I have understood it. Yep. Thank
If
you.
I
All right, great.
could add something to that, I think
Yes, go ahead.
Postman provides a way in which you can use the query. The querying provides an option for GraphQL where you are provided a way to add your authorization types, and in the body there's a section where you have GraphQL. I don't know if I can share my screen.
Yeah, just a minute. You.
So it's disabled.
Wait a minute. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So I'm sharing my Postman screen. If you can see, if you want to provide the authorization, there's a section where you can provide the authorization. And then let's say you're using a bearer token, this is where you put it. And then in the body, there's a section for GraphQL where you can add your query. For example, this one. You can add your query, and then if you have any variables, you can send. Sorry. Yeah, if you have any variables, you can add them over here. Then you can you can receive your data as well. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
All right, that's nice input, Abud. I didn't know Postman has that section for GraphQL as well. Back to you, Deandrew, as we close up.
Neither did I. Thanks a lot for that input, Abid. Also, I don't know if it is a thing that you do, but is it possible that you could just everyone could just like put their social media handle in the chat if they're comfortable with that, so I could just follow y'all and keep up with your development and all.
Yeah, I think those who are willing can do. You can maybe paste your LinkedIn profile or Twitter or any other platform you are comfortable with. yeah, as you go on with that, so let's have final remarks from Deandrew.
All right, great. So let me jump back to this. All right. So yeah. So it was really my pleasure being here. Really happy to share with you all. Really happy to learn a lot from the input of everyone here. Abud, Robert, Kendi, everyone who participated. I'm really happy. I'm really happy I could be here. Actually, I woke up early because it's 8 o'clock. It's 8 o'clock here in Jamaica. So now it's 9 o'clock now. So I got up really early because I knew that if I didn't wake up, I would have slept through this meeting and I would have been so disappointed in myself. But after this, I'm going back to sleep. So I'm really thankful for everyone who came out, and hopefully one day we can get to meet up in real life, like after all this COVID thing is over, whether it's at a Flutter conference or sometime in Kenya, or if you all come to Jamaica, please hit me up. If I come to Kenya, I'll be sure to hit you up, or at a Flutter conference in the USR sometime.
All right, thank you. Nice to have you. And we are very grateful for the introduction and the fundamentals of GraphQL. So some of us who are interested, like me, we can have like a starting point to get up. Yeah, and thank you everyone else for joining the meetup. We are so grateful. Uh, you're all welcome. Sorry, maybe you can just mute. Yeah, so
Sorry,
feel all welcomed in our.
I was saying, could you don't
Yeah,
close it out? I'm copying the links of everyone so I can just follow them later.
yeah. I'm not closing
Quick,
yet.
quick note in the bottom right of the chat, the three dots lets you save the entire chat. That'll catch you all the links all at once.
Thanks a lot. Didn't know that.
Yeah, I also didn't know that. That's great to know. So thank you everyone for joining, and you are all welcomed to our next meetup, which is in March. Apparently it will be the Flutter Engage meetup, so you are all welcome to join it. It's on March 6th. Yeah, so for now I'll just end the recording, but we can still stay on the call to catch up if you're still interested. So thank you.